Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. It's Clay Share Day, and it's almost the end. But we have Drew Seymour here from Clayscapes Pottery. He's going to talk to us about Raku firing. So if you want to know about Raku firing, he's also going to talk about kilns and firing regular kilns too. So if you got kiln questions, all about kilns, all about firing, now's your chance to ask him. So we've got that. And then coming up at 8, it's cake and apron giveaway. We'll be giving away one of these fabulous handmade aprons from Charlie Savo, who makes these lovely things. And during this broadcast right now, in the next 45 minutes, we're going to be giving away 2 $75 gift certificates to Clayscapes Pottery. Ah, right? Did you know, Drew? Drew, did you know that? Hey, Drew. hey, Drew. Welcome on in. I caught Kevin off guard. He didn't know I was going to throw it to you. And he's like, wait a minute. I'm not ready. Stop it.
I'm here, I swear.
He can't figure out how to have so much energy at this point in the day. All right. We got Drew on there. I guess we do. I have zero confirmation. We do.
I see me. I don't see comments. So you'll have to ask them.
I will ask you all the questions. All right, everybody, if you have a question for Drew, you can ask it.
Yeah.
And I will send it over to him. So you type it in and I will relay it to him verbally.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Raku Glaze, Raku clay, Raku firings.
No, there's a Raku clay and Raku Glaze that exists too. So you're not wrong.
And I like Raku clay is one of my favorite clays. It's pretty gritty, and you can hand build and throw with it. And I usually, especially if somebody comes into the office and they're like, I need clay, but I don't know what temperature I'm firing to, I'll give them Raku clay because that stuff fires to any temperature.
Really? Here,
we fired to like
have that Raku clay.
14 in wood kiln, and it's fine. So.
Whoa. I guess. Yeah. I mean, if you're just starting, you've never made anything before, and you want a clay you could use, then sure.
Yeah. It's also like, I'll get people that'll come in that don't have a kiln and they'll want to make something and fire it, but they're not sure where they're going to fire it. And so it's really hard to say like, okay, we'll take a cone 6 clay or take a cone, 06 clay. When you can just give them the Raku clay and say, this is going to fire no matter what you're doing, it will do it.
So I am getting a ton of questions, Drew.
I'm gonna move my thing here so that I don't look like I'm looking to the side. I'm gonna pull up the.
I'm gonna let you all know that. Okay, so do you do hands-on seminars on how to fire a small gas kiln?
Well, small gas kiln, I do not. I actually don't have a gas kiln. So the Raku kiln that we fire is propane. And so that is probably the closest I have for experience as far as firing a gas kiln. I know Don, my dad, he would definitely know how to do that. But as of right now, I don't have a gas kiln to do that with. I'd have
we might be able to change that. I don't know.
Maybe.
Who knows? Who knows what the future may bring? It could happen.
I made it to the end. Yeah, you made it to the end.
You made it to the end. I always make it to the end. And we still have cake. Cake and 8, folks. And giving away an apron. So it's happening. So Lisa's still looking for that Raku kiln package, Drew.
I know.
We are okay. The Raku workshop, we could actually, we're doing something with Raku. Drew is doing a Raku. Just tell everybody.
Yes. So I'm going to be doing a Raku workshop.
Oh, there you go, everybody.
Ta-da! I don't have the package. Like, I don't have the kiln package for you to build your own Raku kiln. I haven't had time to get that together. Believe it or not, the Clayscapes business, that is what I do full time, that is kind of exploding. So finding extra time to do stuff is really tough, and planning out the Raku package is a little tough for me. So what we decided was we're going to go with a visiting pot Raku workshop where you can sign up for the workshop, get a small amount of Raku clay sent to you, and then you will make it, bisque fire it, send it back, and we will do a live stream Raku firing. And I'll go through all the explanations of the firing and how the firing happens and why it does what it does and how the glazes turn out how they turn out. So yeah, that's something that will
coming
be
up. Yeah,
doing.
That's really exciting. So that'll be coming soon. A visiting pot Raku program,
Yeah.
right? The Raku workshop. But so I got some questions. What do you think about the small Olympic top hat electric Raku kiln?
Electric Raku kiln. So I'm assuming it is similar to the Raku kiln I have, where it has on a pulley system and it comes up. They're really good. Those kilns are really good. The issue with electric Raku is it's slower, so it takes a lot more time. The propane lets you kind of blast it with heat and heat it up really quick. It's been my experience that you can do Raku in an electric kiln, but those firings are going to take longer to get to temperature. So it's just a matter of patience. I don't know what the Olympic one looks like, but I'm assuming that that's what it is. So I don't like the cranks. So if it's on a pulley system and it has a crank, that can actually be really tenuous for any pots that you have in the firing, just because the whole thing is going to shake as you bring it up. So I usually prefer a counterweight system to a crank. It's going to be a lot safer for you when you're getting ready to pull your Raku pots, which is the best part. I love lighting pots on fire.
Who doesn't? So this question is, I had my first firing to cone 6. It was great. Only some pieces had little pinholes. Wondering how I can correct that.
So there's 2 reasons why your glaze may be producing pinholes. One of those reasons is going to be that the glaze is applied too thick. So if the glaze is overly thick, you could get pinholing or blistering. The second reason is outgassing, where the clay that you have produces a gas between 1,000 degrees and 1,600. And if all that gas is not released in the bisque firing, it will come out again in the glaze firing, causing pinholing. I do have a special link right here. Boom, control copy, that I will post in the Facebook comments, because that's what I currently have up. And that's a special program that will allow you to do a custom bisque fire where it will eliminate your outgassing issue.
Trying to see if I could copy. Oh, never mind. Kevin beat me to it. I was going to copy and paste it to the Clayshare page.
So yeah, that's and that's a really good program. And what it does is, because it's a little bit of a misunderstanding out there where people say, well, just fire a hotter bisque. And a hotter bisque isn't going to fix your outgassing issue. It's a slower bisque. And so this is the program that we use.
And do I use that one? That might be what I use in my bisque.
I think so.
I don't remember. I think it's what I use too for my bisque. So question about the Raku clay. Will it be vitrified at cone 5, 6?
It will not.
No.
So that's the thing about the Raku clay. I recommend it for people that have no idea what they're going to do or where they're going to fire, not because it will be food safe or watertight at the temperature they're doing it. It's just that it's designed to withstand so much thermal shock and so much heat that you can fire it in pretty much any circumstance. Wood, Raku, salt, gas, cone 10, cone 5. It's not going to break down. It's not going to warp. It's not going to separate, things like that. It's super durable. But from a usability standpoint, when it's done, it's not going to be vitrified until at least cone 10.
All right. So question about the opening up the spy holes during firing. Can you
Sure.
talk about doing that? Do you need to? What's the deal?
So it used to be that you would leave your spy holes out when you're doing a preheat or a candle, where you're increasing temperature slowly and then kind of holding it there to get the moisture out at a really low temp. And then if you don't have a vent, you can leave them out so that there's an easier access for the gases in your kiln to escape. So really, you don't need to do it unless you don't have a vent. And usually if you don't have a vent, I'll take the bottom peephole and the top peephole out to kind of give it a chimney effect. But then once you get up over that 210 degree point, you can put the peepholes back in, and you're good to go. Raccoon firing, that's what we call it as well.
Raccoon. Raccoon.
I love it. Raccoon.
We got a question. Are we going to do a build your own Raku kiln workshop?
I mean, that was originally the plan.
It's still going to happen because I'm still
Yes.
building a Raku kiln, but that's not happening right this minute. It's going to be a while. I have to tell you guys, honestly, I have a feeling it won't happen until
next year.
And that's because moving, I got to build another. It's just, there's too many things. We wanted to do it last year. Basically, the last year and a half has been a big pause for many people. And in all my plans, some of those got paused too. And that's one of them. But it's going to happen. It's going to be a little while. So what is the first thing to fire? Like, first thing you should fire?
First thing you should fire. But so you definitely want to fire whatever you want. So whatever you're making, right? Like you fire.
Or maybe they mean first temperature. It just says, what is the first thing to fire? I mean,
I don't
fire
know.
anything.
You can fire whatever you want.
Whatever you want. The world is your pottery studio.
Yeah.
Make what you want. I usually do bisque fire first or glaze fire. No, I think I just did a glaze first time I fired my kiln.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
Glaze on. So what would you recommend for a first kiln size and brand for a home potter? Getting their very first kiln.
really popular size is the E23S. It's basically a 23-inch wide by 18-inch tall. So it's basically the same size that Jess has, just two sections
shorter. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a really popular size. They're really easy to load when you're bent over, things like that. You can do platters, you can do vases. That's the one I would recommend the most.
And it's not so big that it takes forever to fill it up.
True.
That takes a while. So what if you have no vent and only two peepholes? Do you leave only the top peephole open? They're firing with a kiln sitter.
You can do that. You could take the bottom peephole out and then prop the lid. You could do that.
So I'm trying to think what I did. I had three peepholes, so I did the bottom and the top with my three. When I fired without a vent, but now I have a vent, so they stay plugged up. So that's how that worked for me. So similar question to the one that Terry asked Maria earlier. Do I need to separate my glaze pieces to different shelves if your white glaze is reacting with another glaze? Also, can you explain how to place half shelves in the kiln for proper firing? Yeah, she was talking about a glaze that had copper in it that was transferring off to a white glaze and changing the color of that white glaze. Yeah.
So copper can do that in really high quantities, especially if you have like I know the Amico saturation metallic will do that. A lot of the time it's chrome as well as copper. And so those things, chrome will become what's called volatile and will basically outgas in your kiln, and anything around it is going to pick up a little shade, almost what I'll call it. You're going to want to fire those on a separate shelf. One of the things is if it's super high in copper and chrome content, that will stay in your kiln, and you will eventually start seeing white glazes that have tin will get a little pink blush to them, because that chrome tin combination gives you pink. So you definitely want to be careful and maybe do like a special firing just for that stuff. That way you don't get all that contamination on your white pots, unless you like it, because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it can be. Michelle shared a cute little rhyme. Copper and chrome need their own home in the kiln.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they'll spread out. So yeah, fire them on different shelves and you'll be good. So here's a question. Can I use an extension cord to my scut kiln to fire outdoors in the summer?
No, you cannot.
If you could see my face. Do not use an extension cord. There's none out there that can support your kiln. Please don't. It is a fire hazard.
They have high voltage extension
I don't think
cord.
they're safe.
It's not, if something were to happen, it's going to be an insurance nightmare and you're not going to be covered. Like, it's not, those kilns are specifically designed to, like, if you don't plug them into the wall with the cord that they come with, then they're not covered under any kind of warranty. Like, it has to be what it comes with factory.
So here's the question about the E23S. What amps are needed for that kiln?
E23S, 240 volt single phase, which is what you would put in your home setting. That is going to require a 50 amp breaker. I think it only draws 39 amps, but it's still going to need a 50 amp breaker. Let me pull it up here. Electrical, 240
get it for you.
Yeah, 50 amps.
So yeah, make sure it's 50 amp. Okay.
Draws 39. Oh, I knew that right off the top of my head. I've been
You're
selling a lot
so
of films
good.
lately, folks.
So back to that copper. How about Amoco ancient copper near white glaze? Yeah, that'll do the same thing. It'll probably transfer off a bit.
Yeah, well, so the ancient
copper isn't really, it's an iron.
Yeah, that's an iron based.
It's an iron glaze. So
they call it ancient copper because it looks like that copper color, but it's really an iron saturate. And I have a couple of glazes like that, and there's no copper in them. They're all it's iron. So you're probably fine with the ancient copper.
Terry used the ancient copper and it turned a white glaze yellowish. So maybe the iron.
It could be, or she could need to bisque fire slower so that it doesn't off gas like that.
Okay. So question, why use one kiln for bisque and one for glaze? Now you can use one kiln for both bisque and glaze. You don't have to use two separate kilns. Not at all. No, just one. I call it a bisque kiln, a glaze kiln. When I say those words, I mean that firing was a bisque. It was a bisque kiln it was in, meaning the firing was a bisque firing. It was a glaze kiln because it was a glaze firing.
It was full of glaze.
But it's the same kiln. It's the same kiln. Yeah. It's just what's inside it at the time.
We have separate kilns, but for bisque and glaze, but they can all do the same thing. It's just our older kilns we kind of relegate to bisque, and we have to replace the elements on them less often because they're only going to a much lower temperature. So it's kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? Like I have two kilns that I don't hardly ever have to change elements on, and then I have two kilns that I am constantly changing elements on. And so, because I'm always going to that higher temp, so their life expectancy on those elements becomes lower.
Yeah.
Do you need a 50 amp for the 1018 Scott? No, that is going to be a 30 amp.
All right. There's so much Drew knows. I love it. Sad news. I talked to my electrician and we were trying to do some work ourselves, but it looks like it's September before I get electric now. Just keeps getting pushed back further and further. I'm going to be driving to Clayscapes to fire my pots before we're done.
And yeah, bring them over. But only not anybody else. Don't bring me your pots. We don't do
bring
that.
Drew your pots. So here's a question about your kiln bricks. Can you never rid your bricks of tin? She's afraid to use the palladium because there's tin in it. So like the idea that the bricks are absorbing the tin and then they'll off gas and the firing, that tin will come out.
Yeah, the palladium's got chrome and copper. I don't know if it actually has tin in it. That's the bright, shiny, like mirror looking glaze.
Yes.
Yes,
and
it is. That
very pretty.
That's got a lot of chrome in it. So if that chrome, it does stay in your kiln. I have kilns that have been fired so much that the brick on top has got like this greenish blue hue to it. And that is from Gersley borate. and copper and chrome, and those things stay in your kiln's atmosphere. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, they live there now.
Yeah, and how it
It's not
affects
it's
your
not gonna
glaze, it might
yeah,
not even be really noticeable.
right.
It's almost negligible, but
You know,
yeah,
it's different from having like a pot with that, you know, glaze on it right next to another pot. You get some kind of outgassing, versus like having it just be a minuscule amount that's ambient in the kiln. You know, it is definitely affecting your glazes, but it's so minute that I doubt you would even notice.
So here's another question about electricity. So an outlet adapter is out as well. I have a new L&L M18.
So yeah, an 18M, you don't want to use an adapter. You want to put the proper outlet in. Any point where you have a plug is a potential for failure. So when you see, you know, people with the melted outlets and they're at their house, which sucks. You increase your chance of that by using an extension cord or an adapter or anything like that. I want to make sure somebody was here. One sec. Are you the last one here?
All right. So I'll see if I can answer anything. Well, Drew's being sidetracked. No, you're still there. So what do you think of cone art kilns?
Cone art kilns are excellent. So we sell Scut, L&L, and Cone Art. I find that those three kilns manufacturers are kind of like I would say like the best of the best as far as like home hobby electric kilns, you know, your everyday studio kilns or school kilns. Cone Arts have an extra layer of insulation, so they're super energy efficient. I know some people have gotten grants for kilns because they're specifically getting Cone Arts and they are more energy efficient. So you can kind of, you know, there may be stuff out there available for those, especially if you're a school. They come from Canada, so the shipping's a little bit more, but they're definitely.
If you're in Canada, maybe it's not so much shipping.
That's right? True.
So there's a trade-off. You're getting them here in the US versus getting them in Canada.
Right. But they're definitely like,
they're a good kiln.
I would say I like the Cone Art kilns element channels, are a little bit better than the Scuts. They're a little more, their brick's a little more rigid, a little more sturdy. But they are beefier kilns. They're definitely heavier, harder to move around, that kind of thing. So.
All right. If I need another hose for the vent, can I buy it at the hardware store? So the metal.
You can. It's not the same quality.
Okay.
You know, L&L's got like the super rigid flex hose. I just replaced all of my hose on two of my kilns with PVC pipe, which seems to be working really well. The PVC pipe has a melting temperature of like 300 degrees, which it never gets to. And so, you know, I like that because the PVC pipe doesn't corrode. You could also hard pipe it. If you wanted to get like a hard metal, rigid metal pipe instead of the flex pipe, you could do that and that would work. But again, that'll eventually corrode just like the flex pipe.
So
look at all these questions.
I know Facebook's blowing up. I'm trying to keep, I'm getting Clayshare. You keep track of Facebook. We've got, okay. And the old Scut with 220 plug, if I got an E23, would the same outlet work?
Old Scut with a 220 plug. I would be willing to bet that you're going to need a new outlet.
But just the outlet, it's not that big of a
deal.
Yeah,
you're not going to need a whole line, but
at like we have an electrical supply store. You know, it's an hour away because everything's an hour away, but that's where it is, and you can just go get what you need to match, and you can get it put on, new outlet put on.
This person's asking, how about an old manual kiln that had lead glazes fired in it many years ago? I have a customer that I've been working with who has been using glazes that were misrepresented to her. And so they have lead and
Ooh.
cadmium and things like that. And she's, sent them out to a lab to get like certified lab results from them about, the lead and cadmium levels in her kiln. And while they are minuscule, they are there. And so the thing about lead and cadmium and vanadium, the glaze ingredients like this that are highly toxic, they're highly toxic in the raw state, in the glaze jar or in the powdered form. Once they've been fired, once they've been enameled or the glass is melted over them, as long as it's done to the proper temperature, the danger is past, right? Now, that being said, I know that a lot of manufacturers in the US, they don't use lead or cadmium anymore. So whilst you may have had leaded glazes in the kiln in the past, same kind of thing. The amount that's clung to your brick is so minuscule that you really aren't gonna need to do anything. And it's already been fired, so it's not like you're sticking your hand in an underglaze that, if lead is in it and then gets on you, it's not the same.
So we have a bunch of people asking, what is the element lifespan? Like some folks are saying, I fired my kiln 9 times. Do I need to change the elements? I've fired my kiln 81 firings. Do I need to change my elements? How do you know when it's time to change your elements?
It depends on a number of things. Mainly, it's going to depend on what is the maximum temperature you're firing to and how often. If you are firing low fire only, 05, 06, 04, and you're, just staying in that range, you should be able to go years without having to replace your elements. I know schools that have had kilns for 8 to 10 years. They use the kiln, weekly, and they're just now starting to replace their elements at low fire. The mid fire, when you get into cone 5, 6, you're looking at about 75 to 125 firings. And you're going to have to replace them. So I find, in the studio, we're replacing elements on our kilns like every 7 or 8 months. And then if you're going to cone 10, I would expect with regular elements for the normal easy fire kilns or the KMs, the kiln masters, cone 10, I would expect like 30 or 40 firings before you have to replace elements. But you can get the upgraded like heavy duty or APM elements, and that'll extend the life of your elements a little bit. But I find it's usually not worth the extra cost for those APM elements. Doesn't equal like double the firings. You may get 25% more life out of them, but you're going to spend twice as much on elements. So it's just a matter of what you want to do.
So here's a question. Should the top of my kiln lid bricks be cracking its first couple of years? I mean, mine did.
Cracking
like
depends,
I have
right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a crack from just where the mortar, it's just a little normal wear crack, and it's happened within the first 2 years. But if it's like cracked and falling apart, that's a problem.
That is a problem. So what I say is like your lid, the floor, it's very normal to get these like very fine micro fractures. As you heat up the kiln, the brick in your kiln expand and then contract. And so you are guaranteed to get these tiny little cracks. If you can see into that crack, that is a little bit more of an issue, right? If that crack has some give to it, that's an issue and it needs to be addressed. But for the most part, all those hairline cracks, all those little tiny fractures is totally normal. Where's the best elements for an old Duncan kiln? I would call Pottery Supply House in Canada. They make custom elements for any kiln. They're not like manufacturer quality. If you were to get like L&L elements from L&L and L&L elements from Pottery Supply House, they're going to be a different quality. The PSH, those ones aren't going to last as long, but they're super useful on those kilns that are no longer in manufacture. And so if you just call them up and give them specs, they'll be able to make you a set of elements and you'll be good to go. How do you know when it's time to change your elements? If your kiln firing starts taking extra time, if you notice like, oh, my kiln usually fires in 9 hours and this one was 10, and then the next one's 12 and 14, that's where you're going to say like, okay, in the next couple of firings, these elements are going to fail and it's not going to make temp. You can also tell visually if your elements as rings, they kind of coils, they stick together like this, and as they age, they're going to like flatten or bend in weird ways. So that is also kind of an indicator of like, oh, these elements are going to need to be replaced. And you can also measure them with a multimeter. I don't like doing that, but you can measure you can measure the ohms and and then compare them to what it's supposed to be, but then you have to do some weird electricity math that it usually you can tell just by like the length of firing.
So we have a YouTube question.
Ooh,
how much does your electric bill go up when you use a kiln?
So that's super going to depend on where you live. It's hard to give an answer. I know that with the new Genesis controller, you can plug in your cost per kilowatt hour and then have it measure your electrical costs when you fire your kiln. It's, I know some people that you didn't know that? I'll hook it up for you.
No. Yeah. Geez Louise. I need to do that.
Yep, you can do that.
Wow. So, I mean, I would just, old school way of doing it is I knew how much my electric bill was when I wasn't firing a kiln. And then when I fired a kiln, I figured the increase was due to the kiln firing, right? And that's what it is. And I figured it out that way. But there is more scientific ways. So is it okay to fire a kiln that isn't fully loaded? Is it better to fire for the kiln to be full?
So it doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't matter if the kiln's fully loaded or not, whether or not you fire it. When people say like, oh, you don't ever want to fire a half empty kiln, it's not because it's bad for the kiln. It's because you're wasting that energy, right? Like you're paying to fire that kiln, whether it's full or not. And so if it's half empty, it's still going to cost, whatever for that cost per kilowatt hour. So it's less about, it's portrayed as like, oh, you can't do that. But it's just, if you want to, you can. I fired a kiln with one pot in it before, 10 cubic foot kiln, one test tile. Like it's totally doable. You can do that.
Yeah, or you could spread everything out too if you have, that way it's even firing. So question, I've been using my new L&L doll kiln that they got from you, and the manual talks about fast firing of glaze firing. Then when I read comments from other potters, they say, no, don't do fast fires. With things like mugs and small test tiles, can I fast fire?
You can. So here's the thing, especially with those doll kilns. The results that you get in the doll kiln are going to be different than the results that you get in your larger electric kiln. And that's because the rate of heat increase and the rate of cooling all play a role in the kind of outcome of your results. My Coastal Blue is a perfect example. Aurora as well. In the small test kiln, Coastal Blue is much darker because it heats up really fast and then cools down really fast. The Aurora that we sell in the test kiln, especially on porcelain, it's red. It's a copper red. And then because it heats up really fast and cools down really fast. The second I take that Aurora, which is copper red in the test kiln, and put it into the bigger kiln, it's purple because it takes longer to heat up and it takes a lot longer to cool down. So yeah, it's definitely going to affect it. But that only matters if you're trying to like replicate something. If you're trying to replicate a glaze in the bigger kiln and fire it in the little kiln. If all you have is that little kiln, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
And I'm seeing folks chime in that their kiln, their last firing was less than $5.
Yeah,
less
okay.
than $5. So folks, if you're worried that it's going to break the bank to fire your kiln, this one was less than $5.
It's not like you're not going to have like a $30 kiln firing every time. Right?
Yeah. So exactly. So this person's they have a, let me get it. Ooh, the new cone art kiln and a thermocouple is spitting black dust. Is that normal?
Yeah, so thermocouples do that. I like the L&L. I like the older L&Ls because they have those.
They have a cover.
Yeah, they have the covers. But the new ones are open-ended, and so you have to kind of clean that black dust up every once in a while.
Can we buy the cover for the new ones?
I don't know. I may be able to get them. I could check into that. But yeah, the black dust is like
that is my big pet peeve. That was one of my biggest pet peeves about buying a kiln and why I went with L&L to begin with. One of the big reasons I picked L&Ls, they had the covers on the thermocouples. And then now L&L switched to the open-ended ones, which it's still not as open as a Scott Kilns thermocouple, but
it still spits.
I'm not happy. I'm just going to put it out there for everybody to know.
Or if you wanted to, you could get a Type S thermocouple. So it's possible to get a different type of thermocouple, which won't do that.
Won't flake. They're just a lot more money. So
the problem is they're made of platinum, and they're like $300 each.
I know. See, that's a problem.
And you can't just swap it out. There's you have to make adjustments on the circuitry on the control board, so it's not as simple just to swap out. Now, if you're ordering a new kiln, yeah, we could get a Type S thermocouple, but most people don't want to shell out an extra $300. You know, there's 3 of them in every L&L kiln. You know, so that's a bit.
Whoa, that's $900.
Yeah, so
that's a lot. All right. Will the vent pipe going through a drop ceiling catch on fire?
I would not. No, but I still wouldn't do it. Like, take that tile out at the very least. Replace it with a sheet of metal or something. That would be what I would recommend. But I've seen it at schools. You know, you go to a school and the vent pipe goes up into the drop ceiling, and then the motor is above the drop ceiling. Like, it's fine. You know, it's not going to catch fire. Like I said, it doesn't get hot enough to melt PVC, and that's when the gas is inside the PVC. So outside of that, you know, we're not too worried about it.
I just was reading, people are like, their last firing was $3 for an L&L 23T.
$3. Now, depending on where you live, though, like Jess, you live up in the country there. You may cost more. It may cost a little more.
Rachel posted Northern California. She has a Scott 1222. That's a big kiln.
Yeah.
That's a very big kiln that costs her $30 to fire her big kiln.
Wow.
So you are varying from $3 to $30 depending on the size of your kiln. But in each
and where you live.
Yeah, and where you live in the rates. But the L&L 23T is what I have. So $3 to fire that kiln. That's crazy. It's crazy. So, oh my gosh, so many questions coming in. You know, Drew and I talked. We said we were going to start a kiln firing Q&A and just leave it open and never stop and see how long it takes.
Hanging out with Drew on a Friday.
How long? And we were gonna do that today, but we decided to not today. We are going to have to do that because we've got 4 minutes and I have got about 7 more hours worth of questions from you all.
Yeah,
and I want to answer them, but we cannot. So, so there's so many things. Drew, pick one that's really good.
Pick one, huh? Let's see here. Why don't they ever leave good things alone?
Right? That's a good one. I like that. Why did they do that? Why did they have to make those thermocouple covers? Why couldn't they left them alone?
Okay, so here's one.
How often do you vacuum a kiln? No, I got mine first. Sorry. How often do you vacuum a kiln?
I only vacuum the kiln after each explosion. So if there is an explosion or something that happens in the kiln, I will vacuum the element tracks and things like that. And then anytime I replace elements or do any brickwork, I'll vacuum in there. So.
And I do it the same, except if I'm using any alumina hydrate or any silica sand or any grog on my shelves, I'll vacuum the kiln out after that, just to make sure there's no bits floating around. So, all right, you go with your question.
Somebody asked how much, like a typical, how much would you expect to pay on a standard size kiln like the L&L? I'm wondering, for like to buy the kiln. That kiln there is going to be.
Yeah, there's been a few people who want to save up. You do have to save to buy a kiln.
$2,268. So the E23S, $2,268. Everything has gone up.
Kilns have gone up, folks.
Clay,
since I got mine.
My prices of clay have like skyrocketed.
Wow. Yeah.
So lots of stuff has gone up. It sucks, but it is the world we live in today.
Yeah. So how much it costs to fire on an average electric bill just depends on where you live and how expensive the rates are. Yeah. You know, with me, I think it probably costs me where I live about $20, $25 maybe to fire my kiln. Vermont has really high electric rates.
Yeah.
You live in a place that has really low electric rates, it could be lower, right?
Firing at night. That's the other thing, is do your research, because, you know, we used to live in a similar area, but then if you use electricity at night,
moved to get cheaper electricity?
No, we didn't. But like, I know in my parents' old house, you know, if my dad fired the kiln during the day, the electricity was a lot more. If he fired it at night, he actually paid a lower rate. And it was also cooler. So.
Yeah. So if someone was going to buy their first kiln, like they're going to buy the first one, what should they get and where should they get it from? I can answer. They should get a kiln from Clayscapes Pottery from Drew. You should get an L&L.
You can do that. So
here's the thing. You can get it from whoever you want, but Drew will help you find the correct kiln for your pottery needs, your pocketbook, so your financial budget, and your electric capability for where you are. And he'll help you find it, and you don't even happen to have it buy it from you, do they? That you'll help them.
So they
don't have to buy it.
Right. I always recommend that you support your local ceramic distributor. So, if you're not going to be doing any kind of repair work on your kiln, if you just know you're never going to do that, and you have somebody in your area that does, I recommend using whatever kiln they are familiar with. So if you live in an area where your distributor sells Scott kilns and you're going to need someone to work on your kiln, you may want to buy a Scott kiln. But, I'm also happy to walk anybody through any kind of repair work. So, if you want an L&L, I'm happy to sell it to you. L&L, Scott, Olympic.
I mean, we have ClayShare members buy L&L kilns from Drew from all over the world. We just had a member buy one that lives in a tiny little island nation off the coast of Africa.
She's thinking about it. She's thinking
about buying it. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
It's a little bit of a task to get it there.
Get a kiln there. Yeah, I can imagine it is.
Like right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. So
yeah.
Super, super cool. Really easy to work with. And I have, in the UK, I have somebody that if you wanted to buy something, I have, a contact there to send you to. So.
Okay, I got more people chiming in Sacramento, California, to fire their 23-27 Olympic kiln to a cone 6. It costs them $10 in Sacramento, California.
Same
so it just depends.
It super depends. It all has to do with your local rates and when you fire.
I want to answer all these questions, and I can't. There's too many, and we're a minute over, and I have to end it because cake at 8. Cake at 8, and apron giveaway. So we have to give away 2 $75 gift certificates to Clayscapes Pottery. Boom. So we're gonna do that now, and then I'm gonna go get the cake and come back with the cake. Well, no, it's downstairs. I don't have to leave. I'm gonna go eat all the cake.
We'll come out with the all the info on the Raku workshop
Yes, we'll get that. And my
because
workshop too. We'll talk about that another time. We don't have time tonight, but we'll
yeah,
talk about that. We'll get to that. But we'll get all the Raku
yeah.
workshop info to you, and
it'll be pretty quick here because we're going to be limited for time on when, like, the Raku workshop is there's gonna be a cutoff point because I'm gonna have to have time to get stuff out to everyone. Who wins? Who wins? Who wins?
All right. I'm giving away. Well, actually, Drew donated it, but I'm gonna announce the name, so I'm giving it away. Two $75 gift certificates to Clayscapes Pottery to get whatever your heart's desires. Right? It's $75. They can do whatever they want. They can put it towards a kiln. Buy a kiln with it. I mean, won't buy the kiln totally, but it'll be $75 closer, right? So the first winner of the $75 gift certificate to Clayscapes Pottery is Renee Plains. Renee,
dun, dun,
congratulations!
dun.
You get $75 to spend at Clayscapes. Woo! All right, it is the end, folks. You know it. And then the second one, because there's two of them coming your way. Clara Akoya. I know I said it wrong. Achoa? Anybody want to help?
That's the wrong camera.
Why is Kevin not in the front camera?
Oh no, my camera.
What are you doing, Drew?
Sorry.
Don't listen.
It's been a long day for me too.
Can you hear Drew? Can everybody still hear Drew? Drew is telling me I'm in the wrong camera because he's on my phone over there. Oh my goodness. So there's so many questions. Use kiln wash on your shelves. Yes. Does it flake? Yes. You've got to grind it off and redo it. That's how it goes. That's the process. So much to ask. We will do more clay. True. Honestly, I think in a couple weeks we'll do another firing Q&A.
We'll have to do like every other week.
I think we could do it every other week. It's crazy. There's so many questions and I want to answer them all. All right. So I'm going to go. I'm going to get the cake and I'll be back at 8:00. I might get a bottle of wine too, and we'll give away an apron. All right. Thanks, Drew, so much. Thank you, everybody. I'll see